Hello everyone and welcome to FECast episode 33. Argent Depths has been out for a week and we're going to talk about its impact on the Throne metagame. I am your host, Sunny, and I am joined by my co-host, Stormblessed. How are you doing and how are you enjoying the new set?
I am doing very well this time, and the new set is awesome. I have had a blast brewing decks, and I've had a great time exploring the Throne metagame. I think it's wildly diverse right now, new set and all that. But I read online sometimes that, there's too many Severins going around, but, I don't play against Severin that much, so I don't know where all these Severins are. Maybe just every time I'm online and playing a game, there's no Severins, but, I don't play it just, one time every day. I play it different times of the day and variety of things. I don't know. I don't see these Severins that supposedly exist. So
well, Severin in particular is a card that either does nothing or wins spectacular, and the winning spectacularly is really memorable. So I think it really overrepresents itself in people's memories and whatnot. Anyway, there are a lot of new brews flowing around. I think that, as is always the case for a new set, a lot of people want to just try. Well, there's two avenues of people, right? There are the people who really just want to try out new stuff, and then there are the other people who are logging in for their first wins of the day or whatever, or just want to jam without thinking about it too much and just play whatever deck that they were playing earlier. For the first couple days of Constructed, I was just playing the Mono Fire deck and Throne again, because I had been focusing on draft for the first couple days.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that, of course, people don't always have the cards immediately because people don't always have 200,000 shift stones stocked up waiting for a new set to drop. So
yeah, that's a big mistake, I would say. If you don't have 200,000 shift stones stocked up at all times.
I mean, I was basically poor compared to some of my teammates who have a 1.5 million or whatever. Yada has 5 million. They call themselves poor. It's ridiculous.
Right. All right, we're going to be talking today mostly about the decks that are seeing play in Throne with the new set out, and especially looking at new additions to the decks. And then we're also going to be highlighting cards that are seeing play from Argent Depths and talking about them specifically. But before that, we have some announcements to make. The first big one is that the ECQ for July has been announced, dead or alive, July 10th through 12th. Same deal as all your other ECQs. The winner is going to be going to Worlds, as well as take home $1,000. I think the total prize pool is $3,000, right? For the entire tournament. Yeah. So that's going to be July 10th through 12th. The promo for it is Solitude, and it looks pretty nice. I mean, they did a really nice job of taking the old artwork that shows Roland in the cell and putting Svetya in it.
It bodes pretty poorly for Svetya, considering what happened to the last person in a Solitude art.
Yeah, you either get to choose... Sorry, campaign spoilers for anyone that hasn't played... I don't even remember which campaign this is, but you either get to choose to kill Roland with a Jack's gun or Akari's sword, one or the other.
Then you murdered him in cold blood.
Yeah. So one more thing that goes along with this ECQ is that it's also the continuation of the Fantasy Eternal season. If you want to take part in the Friends of Eternal Fantasy League, go to the Discord and check out the FEFL news to see how to join and how to participate. I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, we only get ECQs once a month, and that also means that we only get to play fantasy once a month. So I'm looking forward to seeing how my team does.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna just switch up my roster just because I can. I don't know exactly how, but I'm gonna do it.
Bench someone and then activate them off the bench immediately, something
that. Something like that. You're benched. Oh, you're back on immediately. The mind games.
So that's the big piece of news. There's a few smaller pieces of news. There's a Science Arrival event this weekend, which is it's going to be... it's pretty interesting. So when you get your 6th influence of a faction, you get a random scion from that faction. And I think it's worth noting that you probably only get that 6th influence of that faction once, but you can get 6th influence of multiple factions. Probably don't want to try to get them in all 5 unless you're an absolute crazy person, because that just seems really difficult. But I think it is feasible to get 6 of 2 factions at least. And if you're trying for it, 3 factions, then that will reward you with a random expensive unit.
Memento mori, reap, 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 all six, all at the same time. The one
Yeah,
thing,
that's probably a winning play. I mean, you get a couple Calebs, right?
we get
Or
one
you get
Caleb.
a Caleb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing though is that you can't play copy effects in this event because otherwise you just get to 6 primal and copy whatever primal legend you got and then call that a day.
Yeah. On to other news. I got together with Kassendrath and Kalebovich last weekend in order to talk about the Argent Depths draft format. So we did a draft summit. I've been trying to do one for each set and just getting together other content creators so we can talk about the format. We talked for about 90 minutes about the Argent Depths draft format. So we don't usually cover draft on this podcast. But there is a lot of me talking with those two about drafting. And of course, those two draft all the time on their stream. If you want to check that out, it has the same RSS feed as this podcast. So if you're listening on Spotify, it should be there. But just in case, I'll drop it in the description in case you need a direct link to it.
Next piece of news is that we're getting a number of new heroes in the near future. There's going to be one one on Monday next week, but there also will be multiple promos in July they've announced. We don't know what these are, what they'll do, but it is cool to get multiple promos, presumably because we did not get a promo in the month of June.
Yep. All right, let's talk about Throne. So this is going to be the format of ECQ Dead or Alive, and we have a week and a half to prepare for that tournament. So let's talk about the decks that are good or new. So let's just talk about returning decks that are seeing a lot of play first. So of course there's Stone Scar and there's Hero Control. I don't think there's that much new with it. Well, okay, Hero Control is probably playing a lot of Helio, which is the 5-drop primal unit that you draw a card for each double primal influence you have.
Yes, it's 5 primal to play for a 2/2 flyer, but has a summon effect that for every double primal influence you have, you get a draw card. So if you have 2 primal, you get 1 card. If you have 4, you get 2. If you have 8, you get 4, etc., etc., etc. I have drawn like 8 cards off Helio before and discarded like 3 of them. It was phenomenal.
I've also seen those decks playing Worldpire. I don't know how useful it is, but I could see it. Like if you're going back up to cards like Channel the Tempest, then maybe it makes sense. But I'm not sure.
The Hero Control decks are also playing, or at least they should be playing, Bring to Justice in some capacity, in some number of, because a zero-cost kill spell is pretty good. I've heard if you can kill a unit for 0, you should take advantage of that. You heard that, Sonny?
Well, yeah, that is definitely, that sounds good to me. I actually haven't seen it firsthand. I've played against a few Hero Control players, but for some reason they weren't playing it. I mean, I guess it doesn't really work on the first few turns of the game, but once you get up to the point where you're just getting face aegis all the time, it seems amazing.
It's possible it conflicts with Helio too much, and Helio's better. I don't know. I haven't tried out Hero Control myself. I've explored other parts of this new set and new metagame than Hero Control, but I assume there's a variant of Hero Control that does want it, and maybe they want both. Maybe it wants one or the other. I don't actually know.
Is Hero one of the faction pairs that gets the Silexes?
I think they get a Vow. Let me check.
Okay, that's a big deal because that is the type of deck where you would really want a Silex, right? You get influence, and in the late game, it draws you extra cards.
We'll be discussing this in a little bit later in a segment about just cards, but yeah, any deck with a Silex is just going to be superior to a deck without a Silex in many ways. You want to be playing Silexes. Like Stone Scar can't play Silexes, but it also sort of negates the issue slightly by not needing it as much. But if you're playing a control deck, the Silex is just so much better than not a Silex. It's, kind of like the difference between the crest in set 2 and the crest dropped. There were only 5 crests, and you wanted to play a deck with a crest compared to the other 5 factions that didn't have crests.
Yeah, it's a source of value that we just don't have in the game really right now. Yeah. All right, so just going back to Stone Scar. Stone Scar is mostly the same of what you would expect. They are playing Darkblade Cut Purse, which is a 2-drop that gains attack equal to your Shadow Influence. That card is fantastic, and having a 2-drop that can attack for 5 is phenomenal. And some of them are playing Button, but
Button.
I think. Well, someone is going to have to tell us how to pronounce it, but my guess would be Button. Whatever this card, but early reports is saying that it's not that good, and you mentioned that it really is lacking for Overwhelm or maybe Quick Draw or something in order to make it better in combat.
Yeah, so I think that there could be a Button Button Stone Scar deck that works really well. I think it's not you can't just take classic Stone Scar or Classic Monster aggro, just throw Buton in there and call it a day. I think you need some way to give it overwhelm, whether it's through like Long Barrel or Rampage or Shugo Standard in the market or something. You need some way to give it overwhelm, to punch it through chump blockers that exist, or give it some sort of evasion, right? So, because by itself, if you take out, say, a Champion of Chaos to kill, a 4-attack unit, and then you attack and they can just chump forever, you've removed your overwhelm attacker and not done damage to the opponent because they just can't have chump blockers. So
yeah, I've played a bit of Sunscar, and I've also had trouble with the influence in the deck when I am including it, because either double shadow or quadruple fire can be difficult if you're trying to get all on turn 4. So it's definitely not free. And those times where you get up to 4 power and you want to play your 4-drop but can't, that's a problem. Yeah. Let's talk about one of the decks that got the most with the new set, and it seems like, or at least the faction combination that got the most, is Xenon. I mean, there's a Silex there, but also a whole lot more. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so Xenon, something I know was my first love in Constructed. So I was pretty excited to see that. I was disappointed that Xenon didn't get a Vow, because I was like, oh, Xenon doesn't get Vow. Koch would love having a Xenon Vow. It's so sad. But then Xenon got Silex instead, and I was like, okay, Darrell, I'm glad you did this for me. So I love that Xenon got Silex. It makes the deck so much better. Like, it's hard to overstate how good the Silexes are, especially in a 2-faction deck. But so Xenon got they got Katra if you really want to go that route, but I haven't done that route. They got Twin Spiteling, which has been really good. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But the big ones are, they got like Tovon and Desert Marshal are some big ones, plus Iron. So there's got like a bunch
Desert
of
Marshal,
stuff. Actually.
You're talking about Desert
Alchemist,
right?
yes. Desert Alchemist has been probably one of the cards that's going to see the most play in Constructed for all of Eternal unless it gets nerfed, which I can't imagine it would be, but I always have to count that as a possibility.
Hey, they nerfed Vanquish, right?
Yeah. I mean, Desert Alchemist is really, really good right now. Like, it's also just really good in general. I mean, it's a Scorpion Wasp for 1 less that also fixes your power. Like, wow, like that's just crazy. So, and it costs 2, which means that there's 3 sort of main variants of Xenon running around. Some of them run with Sever, some of them don't. But there's Even Xenon, which is playing Even-Handed Golem and Sand Warriors, and because it turns out that most of the good Xenon cards that we got from this new set happen to be even cost. Like Tovon is even, Desert Alchemist is even. So then you sort of have your regular Xenon mid-range. It's kind of like before, where you're playing like Teachers and Amaranth Stingers. Sandstorm Titans, the regular old Xenon. And then there's also a flavor of Ambush Xenon going around. You can play it with or without Desperate Courtier, which is the card that makes all of your cards cost 1 less in your opponent's turn. But the coolest innovation that I didn't come up with, that I saw in Ladder, was playing a Market Divining Rod. So, like at the end of turn, you ambush in your Ebon Dune Smuggler, pull out Divining Rod, then your turn starts and you just immediately slap Divining Rod on. And somebody did it against me, and they got Tovon, Zumacan, Desert Alchemist, Gentle Grazer into Time Etching, so they got to go back to the market. That's when I was convinced that Market Rod might be a thing.
I don't think it's a thing. I especially in an ambush deck, like, so much of your power comes from, like, your deck's capabilities come from being able to play at fast speed, basically. But I remember Chamomilk did that on stream Saturday morning. I don't know if he was the first one to do it, but he came up with the idea, hey, maybe I should play a Rod in the market of this ambush deck. Anyway, it definitely looks like it definitely looks like Xenon is very real, and the ambush like themes that they're pushing do seem to be coming through to Constructed.
So the one thing that I'd like to just mention is I think Iron is underrated right now. Iron is the 3 Shadow for a 1/4 Decay Ambush, and when it attacks, you get a Time Influence, and if you have 6 Time Influence at the start of your turn, you take away your opponent's remaining power and you get it. And I think that card is underrated right now. I
thought you were talking about the other Iron.
No, I'm talking about New Iron. New Iron is underrated. I think that he is good. He's the deck. The matchup he's worst against is other mid-range decks, but he's good versus aggro because of 1/4 Ambush Decay. Can jump in, make something smaller, and block pretty reliably for most units that aren't like Champion of Chaos. And then against Control, you flash it in, and then they lose their turn basically if they were trying to do things on your turn. So it prevents other Desert Alchemists from doing anything. It prevents Defiances. So I think that card's a little bit underplayed right now.
I'm really skeptical about its ability against control. Like, it only attacks for one, and your opponent can play fast cards at the end of their turn. They should have a window, right?
I
Unless
think they do, but again, stopping, being able to just guarantee what to do, especially if you combine Iron with Tovon, which I've done plenty of times, you can then draw lots of cards. Like, if your opponent loses 6 power because sometimes they just can't play all their cards because they just
that's
can't use all
true.
their power. So then if you just get extra power, that's really good for the ambush deck. Like, I've also ramped out like Tovon on like turn 4 because I had like a time symbol in play and I attacked with Iron, once or twice, and then got Tovon out quickly. I think that it does good work, especially if you're playing some sort of power sync like Tovon.
Yeah, one more thing that you mentioned is the card that reduces cost of cards on your opponent's turn. That works really well with Gentle Grazer, because then
Yes.
you can get 3 drops with the Gentle Grazer. I got hit by like a banish off of a Grazer. It's insane if
If
that
you have 2 of
happens.
them, you can even do the fabled Grazer into Grazer into Grazer into Grazer.
Grazer was already a very good card, and it might have just gotten better.
Yeah.
So yeah, be on the lookout for Xena in all of its forms. This coming out ECQ, I think it's got, I think it's very likely that it's going to be well represented.
We're going to mention this a little bit later, but there's one other key card that Xenon got that is people are claiming is the best card in the set. So we'll be discussing that in a bit. But yes, keep your eye out peeled for the best card in the set.
Stormblessed, are these people you?
No. I actually don't. I'm not convinced it's the best card in the set, but
Oh, I know what you're talking about now.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, no, not just a random Xenon card, but like an actually, like I think it's actually absurdly powerful. I'm just not sure it's the most broken card of Eternal.
All right, we'll get to that later.
Yes.
All right, another deck that is seeing a resurgence is the Boxer's Even Vox deck. He wrote an article about it. I'll put a link to that one in the description, talking about the new tools that Even Vox got over the course of, or with Argent Depths. And just a heads up, Even Vox is extremely difficult to play, and the Boxer is one of the most competent players out there. So it's difficult to rate how well this deck is going to perform in the hands of basically anyone else. So while it might be extremely powerful, it's also something that's probably very easy to screw up. I actually did play against the Even Vox decks once, but I was playing aggro, and I think aggro is pretty good against it. But what do you think, Stormblessed, about Even Vox?
I will say that's the Even Vox, the Boxer's current version that the article is about, is at least easier to play than 5-faction Even Vox. So, because that deck is really hard to play.
Wait, he didn't put Kilo in this?
No, maybe I misread the deck list, but I'm pretty sure this one's just classic FTS. So it's a little bit easier to play, which is good for those of us plebeians who can't handle 5-faction Even Vox. Myself included in this variety of person.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
I think the deck has legs. I think Even-Handed Golem is still a card that's powerful, especially with the new card Wasteland Broker allowing access for Even decks to go to the market, especially for a deck like Even Vox, which is going to draw lots of cards off of Devours and Quarries and strange burglars potentially. Not Broker, that's Wasteland Broker. Their cards are so similar. They both do things. They're both 4 cost. They both do things, Sonny. Do you know that cards do things?
Their attack plus health both equal 9.
It's true.
Okay, I was totally mistaken. I thought this was another 5-faction list. I didn't take a close look at the list, but yeah, this is a just straight destruction. Okay, this doesn't seem as hard to play as the Kilo Vox deck.
I do think Even Vox is still hard to play though. I think the regular one is still like yes, there are high rolls, especially because Golem's now just a 1/1 that does make the deck more skill testing to play with, because Golem can't block as easily basically, and you can't just like throw things out randomly and get there anymore. So
yeah. So this brings up Wasteland Broker, and that's a card we haven't mentioned up until now, but Kamado says that Wasteland Broker is going to be a card that will shape how control decks look going forward. And I think we talked about this before the cast, the big thing to note about Wasteland Broker, I think more than anything, is that's really hard to kill.
Yeah, it dodges Annihilate, Defile, Suffocate, Torch, Jack. Vanquish now costs 3. So even if they did vanquish it, you're not actually that far behind. You're behind on 1 power, plus you got the market effect. It blocks really easily because it's huge. So the only thing that's really weak to is, I guess, Flyers, and I guess Champion of Chaos.
Flyers.
And Champion of Chaos.
Like that.
But the card is just, it's really big. We saw in Expedition, if you weren't paying attention recently, the last ECQ with Chonky Crag, that 4/5s and 6/5s and X5s are just really big units that are good. And Wasteland Broker being factionless makes it better because it can't be annihilated, which is a common removal spell right now. So the only way to really activate it is by blocking, attacking with like bigger units. It's a good card. It's a good body with a good effect for control decks. And the reason that it's going to be good in control decks versus aggro decks is that you want to be able to draw the card eventually, so you need the game to go long enough that you're going to draw the card you're marketing away, which is also why a deck like an even deck which draws cards, who control which draws cards, whereas Stone Scar that doesn't draw cards is probably not going to, definitely not going to play Wasteland Broker because it's never going to draw into the cards that you put into the market, into your deck from the market.
Makes me pretty sad because I'm probably not playing this card very often in my aggro decks. But yeah, if you're trying to go long, this does seem like a really nice one because it's so hard to remove. I guess Permafrost actually does a really nice job removing it.
Sure.
Well, maybe that's the new meta. I mean, whenever like a new game breaking unit comes into the arena, so to speak, and start seeing a lot of play, the removal that people play have to adapt to it. We saw that with Jack, right? You needed to suddenly play things that had 5 health because Jack was everywhere. Now that Wasteland Broker is around, maybe people are going to have to play more Permafrost or more, I don't know, Slays or not Annihilate, the Desecrate.
Or Turn to Seed.
Yeah, Turn to Seed.
But yeah, I guess Skycrag aggro might come back. Maybe that's a good way to fight the metagame right now.
Yeah, you get Ice Bolt. That's a way of answering it, although it does come to its own cost.
So for the last of the older decks that sort of got revitalized is the Rats deck. Time Primal Shadow Rats has gotten a couple new tools. Not very many because there's very little relics, but one key part that Batteries really tried to experiment with and seems to have worked out is that the faction pairing of Time Primal Shadow got 2 Silexes. Mm-hmm. Some faction pairing, some tri-factions got 2 Vows and some got 2 Silexes, and this happens when they got 2 Silexes. Silexes are really good ways of having undepleted power post turn 3. Really good ways of being able to go to the market for free because you get that extra treasure trove. They're just really good cards. I'm sure that'll come. I mean, if you sense a theme this cast, it's that Silexes are really good and you should be playing them.
Yeah.
So the other card that Rats got is Curtain Call, but again, we'll be discussing that card a little bit later. But aside from that, there were only 14 attachments in the new set, 15 if you count the Siphoner Paladin. So there was very little relics and none that really fit in the Rats deck, but it did get just enough with Silexes and Curtain Call to make the deck viable once again. So I don't know how viable. I don't know if Batteries is just the Rat God who can just pilot the rats like a champion, but not all of us are as vaulted as Batteries at playing Rats, and it does have its downsides. It's not just a slam dunk deck, but it is worth mentioning, and it's a fun deck. And you already have the deck, just put this few new cards in and try it out again.
All right, so you have something written down here. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. Blitz decks?
So do you remember the old Blitz decks with like Gifted Battle, whatever? And,
yes.
Playing a bunch of pump spells. Well, there's a card called Terrors on Echo, which doesn't actually have Echo, by the way, Direwolf. Please, come on. You can't name your units Echo and then not give them Echo. I just want more Echo cards. But Echo's a busted mechanic, so...
Yeah, especially with Plunder.
Yeah. They probably, they probably couldn't put a card with actual Echo in the set because of Expedition, because there's no cards with Echo in Expedition right now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anyways, Terrors on Echo is a 2-cost 1/2 with Berserk, and it has Summon Plunder as well, which is, just the best mechanic. So it obviously has that upside. And whenever you play a spell, it gets about +1/+1 that turn, which also means that because it has Berserk and can attack twice, it gets that buff twice. So that's sort of the key new card that revitalized the deck. But again, you have sort of the base Haru Blitz, which is playing, Real Guns, Disciples, and potentially Hojans and whatever. And this new Terrors on Echo card to just sort of end the game really quickly through Finest Hours and other combat tricks. And I've also seen some variety of trying to branch onto like Fire for the new Fire card, the From Whatever card that gives +2/+1 in charge. So if you can play like Terrors on Echo and give it charge, and then surprise someone out of nowhere with a charging Terrors on Echo that's like a 7/7 that becomes like a 9/9. Oh, and of course Trickshot Ruffian is the other big gain that Blitz got, right? So if you are at like turn 7 or whatever, or if you just happen to have 7 Justice because you're playing, I don't know, like Justice Symbol or something,
Oh, I
you
see.
can play Trickshot Ruffian as a 1 cost like +5/+5 and Lifesteal, which both potentially can blow someone out by attacking for like 20 off of a Terrazon Echo, but also can gain a bunch of life to enable you to get enough time to do a second big blitz swing. So there's sort of 2 big cards that were gone, plus some other smattering of combat tricks and other factions. But yeah, so those are sort of the key to the blitz deck, which might just be better in Expedition than Throne, but I think it has a real chance in Throne as well.
Those decks also get Bubble Shield, which seems
Yeah,
like
oh
a
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
key card for that strategy.
Oh yeah. Bubble Shield line to protect your blitzy units, especially if you combine it with like Railgun's Disciple that also gives it double damage when you play a spell. That seems pretty solid. So we also have another deck that Sunny has really liked. It's probably the only control deck he's ever played in his life.
Come on. I top 8'd with a control deck in the last year of competitive Eternal.
In the last year, he played one control deck.
Hey, I played a lot of Genev also in 2019.
Sunny, I'm never gonna play Wasteland Broker Veil because it's a control card.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, so the deck I'm referring to is the Chainbray Equalize Combray Relics deck. Sunny, would you care to tell us about how Equalize works and explain the card Equalize itself for those of us who don't know what Equalize does?
So we talked about Equalize last week. It's a 3-cost justice spell that has a 4 justice requirement. So you're a lot of the time you're playing it on turn 4. You don't have any way of cheating justice influence, but that's fine. It says that each player, the player with more units sacrifices units until they have the same number as the other player. And then the same thing with hand size. The player with more cards in hand discards cards until they have the same number of cards as the opponent. So what you do is you hope to go first because then you're already down a card. And what you do is you play a power on turn 1, then you play a Power Stone, then you play like another Power Stone or Eternity Core, and then on the following turn you play another Power Stone and Equalize. So I think you've played 7 cards in the first 4 turns. And you don't have any units. So your opponent immediately has to sacrifice all of their units, and they have to discard to the same number of cards that you have. Now, you have like 7 power, but only like 4 cards in hand and no units. So your opponent has to discard down to either 3 or 4 cards. I don't remember the math exactly. And they have to sacrifice all their units. So if they're an aggro deck and they've been beating down in the first 3 turns, they get 3 turns to put on an offensive, but then all of their units are dead. If they're a control deck that's been drawing cards or have echo cards, then suddenly they'd have to discard a ton of cards. It's extremely powerful, and it's like really, really insane when you get into these situations early on in the game, when you can equalize. And the deck's late game's plan is to just eventually grind someone out with something like a Grodov's Burden or something that can draw multiple cards a turn. You mentioned Chainbray, but I haven't tried Martyr's Chains that much in the main deck, but I don't think it's where you want to be. I think you just want like Pit and Nectar instead or something. You need something to close out the game. I am playing Perilous Research and Alarming, which turns into Alarming Findings as a way to close out the game. That's an okay way. I'm also playing Diana in it, which I think is not necessary. But for the most part, I just use Grodov's Burden and I'll just win eventually once I've amassed just a ton of resources because I have a ton of power and my opponent doesn't have any units.
Winning eventually is the best way to win.
I strongly disagree with that.
I knew you would, which is why I baited you by saying that.
Oh gosh, more Stormblessed baiting. Anyway, I don't know if my plan for like turning the corner in that deck is good, but the base plan of playing an early Equalize definitely feels like it is something that is, well, it's one of the most powerful things that I think you can do in Eternal, and it's something that you're definitely going to have to watch out for.
So I think there are other decks that exist in Throne that are good or potentially could be good. We can't discuss everything, but the last deck I wanted to mention is the Stealth Strike Prodigious Sorcery at any cost deck. I haven't seen him like in the past, although to be fair, I actually haven't played Throne because I was trying to get top 100 on ladder, so maybe that's why I haven't seen it, because I haven't played actually Throne in the past day or two. But yeah, so Stealth Strike is the 4 primal with, if you have 6 Shadow, it gains Deadly and has Revenge. So basically, if you have 6 Shadow, it becomes a Revenging Death Strike, which is a lot of value. It's slow value, but it is a lot of value. At any cost is the 4 Shadow for 3 that has Decay and Lifesteal and does 3 damage. But if you have 12, it will win the game because it does 12 damage instead. Both those cards you can combine with Prodigious Sorcery to great effect, whether it's through getting a Destiny Stealth Strike for free, so you get to immediately get to kill something for 5 and draw the card and draw the other card off Prodigious Sorcery, or if you combine at any cost. Either mode is good with Prodigious Sorcery, whether it's just dealing 6 lifesteal or dealing 24 lifesteal. Seems like a powerful base because you get to play Feln, so you get to play Forbidden Research and Felrock, and potentially Rindra if you're doing that sort of thing. So I think there is something there to Feln. I need to go back. That was one of the first decks I tried to brew around, and then I sort of stopped playing because there were other cards I wanted to play with. Obviously, there's a lot of new cards, so I wanted to play with all of them. So I stopped looking into it, but I should go back because I still think there's something there, and it seems like good things. Like I didn't play with Prodigious Sorcery at the time, and then I saw someone play, and I was like, wow, this is a really cute innovation. So I know Sunny's not as convinced by this deck as I am, and I'm not saying I'm 100% convinced, but I just wanted to mention it briefly.
Yeah, there's definitely powerful stuff going on there using was Forbidden Sorcery in order to gain the influence you need for Stealth Strike. I think that Stealth Strike, Prodigious Sorcery, or Stealth Strike reread is really the big part of it. If your reread becomes kill something, draw a card, that is fantastic. Like, once Stealth Strike has Destiny, there's just so much you can do with it.
Yeah, the other upside to playing like Forbidden Research and Stealth Strike is that you get to draw cards closer to your Destiny Stealth Strike. So, it's a combination. Drawing cards and Destiny. It's a combination.
Yeah, I think that this is a real thing. We haven't talked about new Rindra with this deck, but it seems like it would fit in pretty well.
I mean, you already have to play double primal for Stealth. I think Stealth Strike is double primal. I'm not sure, but I know Forbidden Research is. So you're already playing double primal anyways. And if you're playing, 6 Shadow and Quad Shadow, then 4 Shadow is not the end of the world. And if you're playing spells, then Rindra benefits from spells. And it's also just, incidental discard, so it gets value. It can't ever be 2 for 1. It's always a 2 for 1, right? So
yeah, in most circumstances. All right, so those are the decks that we've seen that look to be doing well. Of course, there are going to be other decks that are, longtime contenders in Throne, like Valkyries or Mono Fire or what have you, that are probably still fine. But they haven't really jumped out to us yet. We're going to move on to talking about individual cards. And now that we have a little bit of data, instead of just pure speculation as it was, for our last episode when we were trying to figure out how good these cards are without any experience, now we've seen some of them in action. Hold on just a moment there, past Sunyveil. Hey, what's up? It's Editing Sunyveil, just taking a breather in order to plug a few things. First of all, if you're not already a part of the Discord, be sure to join. Link is in the description. It's the best place to get better at Eternal. You have people who have been playing the game for a long time and happy to share their knowledge with everyone who is around. The other thing is FECast would not be possible without the generous support of our patrons at patreon.com. So a shout out to Alside Bava, Sigma Tank, Work Done Son, Chamomile, Chrissier, D-Dub, and Yeast Out. If you would like to be like these fine people, you can head on over to patreon.com/friends of Eternal and consider donating. All right, that's it. Back to the show. And I think the first thing to note is that Silexes, they're just as good as we thought they were, which is unbelievable.
If not better, Sonny.
Well, I was saying that they might get nerfed, right? So
that's true. I guess.
How much better can you get?
Even better than that. No, actually, I guess even better would be like 100% guaranteed to be nerfed, which they are not. So I guess you guess. Okay, you were right. You were right in this.
And vows to go alongside that. I haven't seen too many people abuse vows yet, and part of that I think is because new Katra is not in a faction pair that has a vow. Yeah, I just haven't seen people doing a ton of things with vows yet, but that I feel like would need a lot of trial and error, like trying a lot of different things, because that doesn't like build itself or slot into an already existing deck.
Yeah, vows basically are currently, I think, best in decks like Stone Scar, where you get benefit from both, the fixing, and you also get a benefit from being undepleted, guaranteed, because that's what aggro decks want, right? Decks that are potentially depleted are better in a controller mid-range deck, and card decks that are always want undepleted power benefit from power that's always undepleted. So Silex's Arc would be great in any deck, but they do their best in longer decks for obvious reasons. So if you're playing a longer game deck, you probably want to have a Silex. One of the downsides to playing Huru Control right now is that they don't get a Silex, which kind of stinks.
Well, I mean, I would say it's probably a good thing for the metagame.
Sure. Well, they'll eventually get a cycle like Sunny. I mean, presumably Darylf is going to someday finish the cycle, so.
Yeah. All right. So Argent Depths was highlighted by the legendary cycle of 4-drops that have 6 pips of influence. So which of these are actually good? We haven't mentioned too many of these in a positive light thus far. Butin is kind of a bust so far, and well, I haven't seen too many of these. So let's talk about the ones that we think are going to actually emerge from this as real players.
So just remember, though, this is a throne podcast today, which means that, we're not talking about Expedition. Presumably, there's more of these will be good in Expedition than are in Throne. Like Marley, probably more of an Expedition card than a Throne card if you can reach that influence. But as for today, we sort of have 4 we're going to discuss. We already discussed Bhutan a little bit, and we discussed Ringe a little bit earlier. So, Sunny, why do you think Rindra is actually good in Throne?
Well, yeah, Rindra strikes me as the actual best of the bunch, which
it's kind of a hot take, actually.
I guess we kind of, yeah. Well, I mean, we were kind of high on Rindra in the last cast too, right? But I mean, it just seems like a card. It pairs well with Felrock, which I think is, given new life with Forbidden. Sorry, what was the
Forbidden Research.
Sorcery Research? Jeez, I can't remember the name of it. Draw 3, discard 2, and that card helps you play Rindra, which is really nice. So like I think that shell is kind of there. Plus, I liked Rindra's effect, right? Getting to take any card from your opponent's hand, and also threatening to swing for 6 lifesteal.
Well, it's not taking any card. It's the Felrock effect, right? They choose what they discard, right? You're not choosing what they discard, right? You used to take any card, which sort of implies a.
Oh shoot! Okay, yeah, I thought this card was way better than it was.
No, it's not targeted discard. It's the reason I think it pairs well with Felrock is because because random discard pairs well with each other, right? If you stack it up, if you play a Felrock and a Rindra, you have more opportunity to discard 2 cards, which once you can start stacking discard effects, that's when random discard gets good. 1 random discard is less. Is not the end of the world, but if you can have 2 or 3, then suddenly discard can become good.
Okay, I take that back. My bet is on Diana.
Yeah, I was wondering why you're so high on Rindra. Like, I think it's a fine card, and I think that, you'll see play in this potentially Felrock at any cost deck, potentially, but I was like, why is it the best one?
Yeah, this is all going to be edited out in post, so, don't sweat it.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. This is totally going live. Anyway.
We're live from the past.
Okay, so Rindra probably could see play in that deck. Is it good? Well, it's a lot worse than I initially expected. Like,
oh no.
Whose choice on, like, it's the difference between taking the best card in their hand and the worst card in their hand. That's a huge difference. Anyway, so on to the next one. Kenna. You think Kenna is good? I don't.
Yeah.
Why is Kenna good?
Well, you see, Sonny, it's a 4/5 with Killer and Flying, which is, you remember we were discussing Wasteland Broker and how it doesn't die to anything? Kenna is the exact same body. It also doesn't die to anything Wasteland Broker wouldn't die to as well. Except for, like, Felrock's choice. Except for, like, what is it, like Ranger's choice? Something. Except the one that kills multi-faction units. That doesn't see any play. So Kenna basically has just as much survivability as Wasteland Broker. We already discussed that body is really good. And it has Killer. And Killer is, if you guys don't know, Killer is a really powerful ability. Especially on a 4/5, because it can kill something and stay alive. Yes, its influence can be tough, but it will be good at any point in the game, basically. And its ultimate is flavor texty to some extent, but, if it comes up, you got insane value by drawing back any spell you want, so that's always going to be positive. So it's just a really good card. I think it's just a really solid body, I think there does have to be a core surrounding it, but I think it's worth building towards. I think the reason we haven't seen more of this and more of some other cards coming up later is just because people don't have Shiftstone right now. It's a new set. People are building other things, and because there's no established Kenna deck, people aren't going to build into it, right? Whereas like people are like, oh man, Equalize is great. I'm going to build an Equalize because other content creators are calling it out. If there was a content creator who called out Kenna, I think there'd be more of it on ladder.
Yeah, I disagree. I think Kenna's bad. I think Killer is just, like, really bad in Throne. There's so much hyper aggro around, which Killer is not good against. And there's so much, like, hardcore control, which Killer is also not good against. Then you're left with, like, a 4/5 flyer, which is definitely not a good enough rate in Throne. That's my opinion on the matter. I'm really low on Kenna. I basically feel like it has no chance of succeeding.
How is Killer bad against aggro?
Because your unit's exhausted.
but you still get to kill a unit. So like,
Yeah, sure, but like compare that to Var, you get to kill a unit and you've got a huge lifesteal blocker.
how do you kill a unit and get a huge list of block with Var? Don't you have a 3/3 blocker at that point?
That's a big lifesteal blocker against aggro.
I guess so. I don't know. I think a 3/3 is just torchable. So, but and is annihilatable. So I don't know. I'm not convinced by your argument that killer is inherently bad versus aggro. I mean, obviously, if it had endurance, it'd be a busted card, right?
Well, yeah, then I think it would be playable. I just think I just really don't think that 4/5 killer flying is really that much to write home about in Throne right now.
I'm surprised by that. I mean, I haven't crafted the card yet because I've done other things, but it's on my to-do list, and now I feel like I have to craft it just so I can prove Sunny wrong.
Okay, go ahead, waste your time.
I will. Fine.
Okay, good. Now that we got that set, let's talk about Diana. So Diana is now my front runner. Diana draws a card when you play her. She's a 2/4 flying, gain 2 armor, gain 2 health, and has an ultimate of pay 12, gain stats equal to your influence permanently.
Pay 12, become a lethal body. Basically.
Yeah, I definitely 20'd people with Diana with the Equalize deck late in the game, which was awesome. Yeah, I think that Diana does a really good job of playing defensive while still putting a little bit of pressure on opponents if there's like a site in play or something like that. And also has an awesome late game potential, and the fact that she replaces herself makes her playable and makes her good in my opinion. But I think she only fits in really specific decks. You have to have a really heavy justice influence requirement. Also, I've been playing her in the Equalize deck, and she's been fine. But I don't know if she's the best for a deck that's running, as many sweepers as that deck is.
Diana has some cool things going for her. Gaining armor is surprisingly relevant because you play good amount of relic weapons, like the 3/9 relic weapon getting to become like a 4/11 relic weapon with the other new power stone that I forgot the name of already for some reason. Pillar Progress. With Pillar Progress and Diana, you can have like a 4/11 relic weapon, which is just really big. There's a couple other relic weapons you could potentially play as well, like Knife. Diana is good, even not on 4, which is nice. If you don't have the influence on 4, you can then get there because it draws you a card immediately and still gain you the life and block and stuff. It also has support with cards like Enter the Monastery, which will get you the Justice influence because it draws you 2 Justice sigils. Or rather, it plays 1 and draws 1, so it can help you fix for Justice.
Oh yeah, you might have been right about Enter the Monastery. Yeah. I was playing that in Equalize, and it's pretty good.
I think Enter the Monastery is the card holding the deck together, personally. But it draws a card, it plays a power, it costs 2. It's really good. It fixes Justice, which is important because when you're playing all these power stones, you don't actually get the Justice, you don't actually get the influence from them. So you need somebody to get influence.
Look, it's been a long time since Cultivate has been good in Magic, and it's basically the same card except worse.
Well, no, it costs 2. It comes into play undepleted, which
that's true.
I was playing a worse version of the deck because I just brewed up a version that wasn't good because I was playing too many units. Actually, I was like Desert Alchemist and Tovan and Diana. Then it just was not that great to play too many units. But Enter Monster was just great. Like it comes into play for cost 2. Like that's really good. So like 2 cost Cultivate's a lot better than 3 cost Cultivate. Let me tell you. And also the games are different. So I think just straight up Cultivate would be better in Eternal than it is in Magic because Magic's a little bit lower to the ground and a little bit faster than Eternal is on average. But anyways, so Diana, I'm in agreement with Sunny. Diana's a good card, and it'll probably see play.
Okay, Butin. Not enough stuff going on there. Doesn't have Overwhelm.
Yeah, needs some kind of evasion to be good enough.
I think just like the fact that you can't always play it on 4, and the fact that it's not Bandit Queen doesn't buff your other units or have quick draw itself. That's really the problem with it. I think.
Yeah, and you were right though that I was like I was looking at too much best case scenario when I was discussing it with like if you have to stun your Champion of Chaos to attack with it, then you don't get attacked with the Champion of Chaos, and it can just be blocked by a 2/2, right? Like I'll trade my random Devotee of the Sands or whatever to save 10 health, and then like Harsh Rule next turn or whatever. So Bhutan needs some sort of evasion. I think there's potentially power there, but someone needs to make a better deck for him than just throwing him into just any old random Stone Scar deck.
Yeah, 5/2 charge for 4 is not good enough.
Okay, so let's move on to what some are calling the most broken card in the set, possibly the most broken card in Eternal. I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but not again. This is other people, not me, and it sounds like it might be because it's a Xenon card. This is Curtain Call. Curtain Call is Shadow. You give 2 units plus 2 attack and lifesteal for the turn, And if you have 4 time, all of your units, not just the 2 you're targeting, but all of your units can't be killed this turn. Oh yeah, and it also has revenge for some reason.
Yeah, I've seen this card do a lot of work in limited for sure, but I can definitely see it being really good and constructed. There's a combo that goes along with it involving Stained Honor and Twist cards, right?
Yeah, so the main combo is Stained Honor, Belligerent Yeti, and Curtain Call. For the low cost of 6 power, spread across, however many turns you need to spread them across, or just all at once. And
you only need 1 Shadow Pip, or 1...
2 Shadow.
Primal
you
Pip.
need Primal, Shadow, Time. You need 7 influence, basically. Primal, Shadow, Time. And you can immediately win the game, because Belligerent Yeti has Twist, pay 1 to deal 1 damage. Stained Honor reduces that to 0. If units can't die, you can create a -30 Twist unit, which is very funny to see him play, to have just like a -28 Twist unit. And then you can deal infinite damage and gain infinite life too, because you give your unit lifesteal. Belligerent Yeti does the damage. So
the reason that this is better than most combos of this nature is that one of the combo pieces, Curtain Call, helps you protect your unit also. So that, like, usually this combo piece is not doing anything unless you actually have the combo, but here it actually has a really important function.
That being said, I'm not sure about the combo as far as like whether it's going to be tier 1 or not, but I think Curtain Call is tier 1. Like I mentioned Xenon, it's really good in Xenon, because you can give your Sandstorm Titans or your Tovons, lifesteal to have a huge swing to protect them from removal. It's like Stand Together, but cost 2. It has Destiny because it prevents Harsh Rule. So, I mean, it has Revenge, not Destiny. It has Revenge because it can, block Harsh Rule. It is really good. Like, he's playing, like, it warped Rats, a 3-faction deck to be able to support Curtain Call. It probably should see played even Vox. Like, Boxer's article doesn't mention Curtain Call, but it probably should. If you're playing Gentle Grazer, you might as well play Curtain Call for, one more time influence, but you can hit Curtain Call off of Grazer. And that's a huge blowout right there. Like, Curtain Call is insane. It's really good.
I'm not actually naysaying this. That's how much faith I have in it.
like there are people who are already saying like it should like if it had to be nerfed, what would it be nerfed into? And I'm not sure about that, but I do think that here's my hypothetical, Sonny. So my hypothetical for if it is nerfed, here's the reason why I think it'll be nerfed, is because I think it was buffed at the last second. Like the stories of Skull Clamp and Magic. So here's my conspiracy theory for how I think it was buffed at the last second. So you remember how Curtain Call was bugged when it was first released? So apparently the bug was that you needed 6 time for your units can't die effect to go off instead of 4 time. Which means there's an implication that perhaps it was originally 6 time, but they buffed it at the last second, but didn't change the coding of it.
Yeah. That's interesting. So
that would be the reason. That would be like the main impetus for why eventually it might have to be nerfed, is because it was buffed at the last second and maybe wasn't tested enough. If this is just the speculation on my part, but and again, it's possible that it was buffed at the last second and still might not be a problem, right? So it might not need a nerf in the end, but it is exceptionally powerful, and it's also really fun to play with. And the interesting thing is, the reason it might not be needed to be nerfed is because it's also, once the card exists, it can be interesting to play against. Yes, it can provide blowouts, and you'd be like, well, I guess I have to walk into it. If they have it, and I die. But like, I was watching some streams, and I was watching like Theo playing against play around it, and it was really interesting to watch people try to play around Curtain Call. And they're like, what if the opponent has it? Should I play around it? So there is some sort of interesting tension there if it's coming, just like with Stand Together. And in this case, it's actually interesting compared to Stand Together, because in some sense you can't really play around Stand Together, because they can just end of turn play it to give the units the buff forever, right? But Curtain Call is a 1-turn effect, so you can play around just a little bit more than Stand Together.
Well, I think that playing with Stand Together in mind is actually a useful skill to learn or something like that, but it's splitting hairs. Okay, so if you're playing against a Xeon deck, be sure to look out for Curtain Call.
Playing against any deck with Time and Shadow in it, not just Xenon. Like Rats is an Aurelian deck. Just if they're playing against that with heavy Time and some sort of Shadow, Curtain Call is probably in there.
So are people other than Batteries claiming this card is the best card in Eternal, or is it just Batteries?
I know like Enroush thinks it's the best card in set 9. There's a number of cards on the Eternal. There's a number of players on Eternal Discord. I think Kamado thinks that Curtain Call is one of the best cards in the set.
Okay.
Not necessarily the best card in Eternal, but there's a number of people who think it's the best card in the set.
All right, fair enough. All right, so the next couple of cards on our list, Equalize and Darkblade Cutpurse, we already talked about. Equalize, of course, being in its own Combrei deck, or I guess it doesn't have to be Combrei, but it just seems like it makes the most sense with the relics that break the symmetry. Darkblade Cutpurse seeing play in Stone Scar decks. We're also seeing a bunch of Wasteland Broker, of course. A lot of people are trying it. It's a merchant that works in even decks, and I think that's really its purpose for any even decks. This is how they're going to get access to whatever they want in the market.
Yeah, Wasteland Broker is interesting. I still think it's the most interesting card in the set because I think it's in the running for the most powerful card in the set, but we really don't know how it's going to shake out in the end. Like, it has a strong body, it has a potentially strong effect, but it's also just such a different effect. It's kind of like a Messenger Hawk, but better in a lot of ways, obviously, because it has attack, it has health. It doesn't require you to have the card in hand already, so you get, a selection of things. So it's kind of looks like a better Messenger Hawk in a lot of ways, which might be good enough. But the only frame of reference we really have for it is Messenger Hawk, and that didn't see any play because also top 20 is different than all your entire deck. So it's really hard to evaluate.
Another card we have put down here is World Pyre. Again, it's also really hard to evaluate, and it's very unclear if it's worth it.
World Pyre is potentially really powerful. It does a completely unique thing we've never seen before. If you have influence, it will allow you to play any card in your hand, basically. So on turn 5, you probably can't play things unless you've played... Actually, you probably can, actually. If you're playing a 2 or 3 faction deck and you're just playing a bunch of dual power, you can pretty reliably slam like Channel the Tempest on turn 5. Some cool things, more expedition things, but you can play off-faction cards in your market, put them into your deck with Wasteland Broker, and then play them out with World Pyre, like the thing people are doing in Expedition more. But I think could come to Throne is 8 of the Haru, the 12-cost Haru card that stuns all units, draws 2 cards, gains 4 armor, and plays 2 owls, I think is what the card does.
Yeah, sounds right.
So you're playing that in your deck that's not playing Primal. I think it's like you're playing, or even Justice potentially, or either. And then you put it in your deck with Wasteland Broker only if you have World Pyre already. Then in the future you can play it off of World Pyre. You don't actually have to have factions in your deck. So it's got a lot of potentially powerful things going on, especially with other cards like Wasteland Broker.
Yeah, one note about it, I think you need to play it a lot of card draw, because if you're not playing card every turn with this, then you're probably not getting your value off of it. So the cards like Channel the Tempest, Aid the Huru, I think that's what you want to be playing with this card. Not trying to do like some one big combo involving First Flame or something and then no other cards.
No, I think in Throne especially, you're going to be wanting to play as a value card to just sort of get good tempo over the course of many turns. Especially because in Throne, you're going to be wanting to play in a Primal deck because you really want Face Ages with this card, because if you play it and then they go like end of turn Cat and you lose your World Pyre and you lost your turn 4, that's pretty backbreaking.
Yeah. Okay, why don't you tell us about this next card?
So this next card, I have seen literally 0 copies of on ladder that's not from me. It is Twin Spiteling. Twin Spiteling is 4 Shadow for a 1/1 unblockable deadly, but it has a summon effect that plays a Timekeeper. Timekeeper is a unit with attack and health equal to your time influence. So sort of best case scenario on turn 4 is that you have, 4 time, or sort of best average case scenario is that you have 4 time 2 Shadow, and you play Twin Spiteling and get a 4/4 and a 1/1 deadly on your turn, then the 4/4 even grows every turn. You can also do cool things with, say, Time Symbol and make a 5/5 on turn 4. Time Symbol is especially relevant because you might want to play this with Oobsot, who we actually haven't mentioned yet, it wasn't on our list, but Oobsot is really good. Oobsot is incredibly powerful and worth building towards as well. So they sort of play well together because Oobsot wants heavy time, this card wants heavy time. The reason this card probably doesn't see as much play right now is that it's a legendary. If it was a rare, I think it probably would see more play on ladder. But if you're playing Xenon, you should really consider this card, especially if you're playing heavy time. Like, even just on turn 4, just making a 1/1 deadly and a 3/3 can be just really solid. And if you play it late in the game, you can make a 6/6. It also plays really well with Current Call, mentioned above, is that because Current Call is better if you have 2 units. This produces 2 units. It's, if you have a deadly unit, you can guarantee to kill something. If you have a big unit, you can reliably kill something and gain a huge lifesteal swing. So it plays well with the aforementioned Current Call. I think it's a really powerful unit, and I'm surprised it's not seeing more play, especially because Xenon's seeing play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a lot of options in Xenon, so,
I know, but like, if you're playing if you're playing even Xenon, you have even less options. So like, and this is an even card.
Yeah, but like, you also have to... It's also fighting against like Wasteland Broker and Arboreal Grazer and New Katra. Like, I'm not saying that it's not good. I obviously think that this card is good, but like it's fighting against a lot of things and cards that people already have, like Vara and Sandstorm Titan too.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm gonna play Wasteland Broker and Xenon decks. I've seen it a couple of times, but like it didn't impress me.
Yeah,
like,
I wouldn't think you would.
Like I saw Wasteland Broker. They were playing Wasteland Broker and Ebon Dune Smuggler, and they put Divining Rod into their deck from Wasteland Broker, and that was just awful because you make your rods worse because there's more rods to pull off rods, so you're just discarding rod with your rod. So yeah, that wasn't very good. But yeah, I think Twin Spitling is really worth looking. If you like your Xenon and you've got Shift Toad to spend, you should play with Twin Spitling because it does a lot of work. It's good versus aggro in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It's got a lot of uses, applications. The last card on our list is Helio. We've already talked about this card. Can draw a ton of cards. I think it's kind of slow, but I mean that I tend to play aggro decks, and when I see something like this, I'm just like, okay, yeah, just keep on attacking, no big deal. But I could see how this is good against, you know, like control decks or mid range matchups. I could see how this card is really good.
So I'm curious, Sunny, do you like Wisdom of the Elders? Do you think that card is good or bad?
I think it's bad.
Okay. Yeah, so Helio, I think is fine if you can draw 2 off of it, and becomes actively good once you can draw 3 or more off of it, especially once you can draw like 4 or 5. The thing about Helio is that, you know, it can just jump block. Like if your opponent's playing like Stone Scar, you just like, I don't know, block their, you know, big unit, block a Jack or something, and then next turn you can play your Hailstorm or whatever, because if you draw a bunch of cards, you're presumably going to draw your answers, right? So I think it does enough.
I don't think it actually blocks because your opponent has a bunch of dead removal in their hand. Unless they're all like open contracts or something, they're going to be able to hit your Helio. They're just going to finally have a target for their Torture or Annihilate.
So the other thing I wanted to mention about Helio, and I think that maybe can convince Sunny to come around, is that I think Helio's probably better in the market than the main deck. Because I do agree with Sunny that, you know, you really don't want cards like Helio until you want them. Like, until you, like, really want them, you really don't want them. Like, having your opening hand is just awful. Like, you know, but once you want them, they become really good. So if you play it with Wasteland Broker to put forward your deck, or if you play it with, you know, regular merchants to just play 1 and draw, like, 5 or 6 off of it late game, I think Helio could do a lot of work in the market, especially. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like Wasteland Broker, you can pretty much play whenever, and it's going to get you a fair amount of value.
Yeah,
it just depends on your deck construction. Whereas Helio, it really depends on what's going on in the game. If your opponent has, you know, 6 units attacking you, this is not what you want to be doing. You want a harsh roll.
and of course, you know, it's only really good depending on what's happening to the game. Hello, that sounds like a market card to me, because those are the cards you want that are really good if there's a specific point in the game. That's what the power of the market is, that you want to play cards in the market that are situationally really powerful. You don't want to play like average cards in the market. You don't want to play like, you know, 4-cost 4/4s that have no text on them. You know, cards that are sort of medium. You want to play cards that are really good in different situations because you have 5 slots. So presumably you pick 5 situations where you really want this card, you know, cheap relic removal, good card draw, you know, a sweeper of some kind, right? Cards that are situationally exceptionally good. And this card is situationally exceptional. So it's the perfect market card.
Check out the episode of FECast where Eric and I talk about markets for about an hour and a half if you want to learn more about markets. Speaking of Eric, is Eric back?
No, Eric is still taking a break from Eternal. You know, I expect some of these people will come back eventually. You know how card games work. You can never truly leave a card game forever.
Yes, that is very true. All right, well, that's all we have to talk about today. Thanks so much for joining me, Stormblessed, and good luck to everyone out there who's going to be playing either in the new ladder environment or in the tournament on the next week. What do you think we're going to talk about next week in next week's cast?
Probably the ECQ?
Yes. Probably the ECQ. You'll get all of our best opinions on what's going to do well in the ECQ and what you should play. So make sure you tune in for that next week. Until then, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the friend zone. Friends of Eternal is awesome, but you know what's even more awesome? Our amazing patrons over at patreon.com. That's right, Friends of Eternal now has a Patreon where you can help support the content and initiatives of Friends of Eternal. If you enjoy FECast and you enjoy the Piloting Club and you want to join the people that make all this possible and sustainable, be sure to head over to patreon.com/Friends of Eternal and consider donating. Every little bit does help. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time on FECast.